The former spouse and his current partner attended a gala and unexpectedly encountered his dazzling ex-wife. The Harrington estate gleamed like a gem under the night sky. It was the year's most awaited event, a congregation where the city's elite mingled, exchanging insincere pleasantries and secrets veiled by luxurious champagne. Michael stepped out of the sleek car with Sophia, whose allure was undeniable. She radiated a deliberate charm. Clad in a crimson gown with strategic cuts, she seemed determined to assert her place beside Michael. "You look flawless," he whispered, straightening his coat. "Remember, we're the power couple here." Yet, there was an underlying strain in his tone. Sophia sensed it, though she chose not to comment. As they entered through the grand doors, the ambience embraced them with the gentle melodies of a string ensemble and the hum of lively chatter. Michael greeted familiar faces, showcasing his charisma. Everything appeared impeccable until he spotted her. Isabella. She stood by the hearth, a serene smile gracing her lips, a wine glass in hand. She donned a timeless black dress, yet her demeanor suggested she commanded the room. Her hair was styled in a sophisticated updo, revealing exquisite earrings that twinkled like stars. It was impossible to overlook. Michael's gaze faltered momentarily. He felt a pang of an emotion he refused to acknowledge. Remorse, longing, or perhaps regret. Sophia followed his gaze and saw Isabella. Her expression stiffened. "Who is she?" Sophia inquired, though she already knew. "My ex-wife," he responded, his voice subdued. "She doesn't seem fazed by your presence," Sophia remarked with a hint of sarcasm. Indeed, Isabella appeared entirely composed. She was conversing with a small group, who were chuckling at her remarks. When her eyes finally met Michael's, she subtly raised her glass in a quiet salute. The gesture was minimal, yet it bore significant weight. "Michael," a voice called, snapping him from his reverie. It was Daniel, an old acquaintance hosting the event. "Come meet some investors. Have you brought delightful company?" Sophia smiled, but her focus remained on Isabella. "Of course, Daniel." "Sophia's my partner," Michael stated, hastily introducing her. As they were drawn into a circle of discussions, Michael struggled to concentrate. His thoughts oscillated between Isabella's presence and Sophia's hardened demeanor. When he finally managed to step aside, Sophia tugged at his arm. "You seem uneasy," she said, her soft tone laced with accusation. "It's nothing," he replied, but his eyes continued to scan the room for Isabella. Shortly after, the inevitable occurred. Isabella approached them with the same poise she had maintained all evening. Before we proceed with this captivating tale, please like and subscribe to the channel to help me reach 3,000 subscribers. "Thank you. Let's continue." "Michael," she said, her tone both warm and aloof. "What a surprise." "Isabella," he replied, forcing a smile. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Harrington is an old friend," she explained, glancing at Sophia. "And who's this?" Sophia stepped forward, extending her hand. "Sophia, Michael's girlfriend." Isabella greeted her with a gentle smile, but her eyes were as sharp as daggers. "Pleasure to meet you." The exchange was brief, yet each word seemed laden with unspoken implications. As Isabella walked away, Sophia turned to Michael. "She's breathtaking," Sophia said, not concealing the bitterness in her voice, "and she still seems to hold a certain sway over you." "Don't be absurd," he retorted, but avoided her gaze. Across the room, Isabella observed from a distance. Her smile remained, but there was a glimmer in her eyes, a blend of triumph and wistfulness. As the guests danced and conversations flowed, Michael realized that despite his efforts, he couldn't disregard Isabella's presence. She seemed to exude a confidence he had never witnessed before. He wasn't certain what it signified, but an inner voice hinted that the evening wouldn't conclude as he had anticipated. The night unfolded like a well-rehearsed play. Yet, Michael felt the tension mounting with each passing moment. Isabella seemed to emanate a presence that unsettled him. As Sophia left to fetch a drink, he watched his ex-wife engaging with a small group. She appeared more self-assured, more vibrant, entirely different from the woman he had left behind. Isabella was no longer the uncertain shadow who waited endlessly for him during late-night meetings, nor the woman who pleaded for his attention while he neglected her. Now, she embodied strength, something he no longer recognized. Meanwhile, Sophia, growing increasingly suspicious, returned with 2 champagne flutes and sat beside him. "You've been acting odd since you saw her," she remarked bluntly. "Be honest with me, Michael. What happened between you?" He attempted to dismiss it, but Sophia's gaze was unwavering. "It's nothing," he said, but his words rang hollow. Michael and Isabella's marriage was a perfect match on paper. He was a driven, charismatic entrepreneur, always surrounded by influential figures. She, on the other hand, was gentle, devoted, a gifted writer who set aside her aspirations to support him. Initially, there was love, passion, even camaraderie. But over time, Michael's ambition consumed everything. Isabella accompanied him to events and gatherings, but soon realized she was merely an accessory in his life. He never truly saw her, not her efforts, not her sacrifices, not her anguish. "You knew I had dreams too," she once said during a heated argument. "I wanted to publish my novels. I wanted something beyond being Michael Harrington's wife." "That again, Isabella," he replied, exasperated. "I worked tirelessly to provide this life for us. Everything you have comes from me. You should be grateful." His words left a lasting impact on her. He didn't see her pain, her solitary nights while he was away, working. Isabella eventually learned that his meetings weren't solely for business. The infidelities began subtly, but soon became impossible to ignore. She confronted him once, holding back tears. "You're seeing someone else, aren't you?" He didn't deny it. Instead, he shrugged. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill, Isabella. Perhaps if you were more like them, confident, entertaining, things would be different." That was the final fracture between them. Isabella, heartbroken, gathered what remained of her dignity and departed. It wasn't easy, but the divorce granted her the freedom she had never known. She rebuilt her life, rekindled her passion for writing, and achieved what Michael never anticipated. She flourished. At the gala, as Isabella gracefully navigated the room, Michael couldn't escape the memories that haunted him. He tried to convince himself that he harbored no regrets, but something in the way she regarded him, with a mix of disdain and indifference, shook his confidence. Sophia, standing beside him, noticed his distraction. "She left you, didn't she?" she asked, her voice icy. "I left her," he replied bitterly, "but not before she became insufferable, always complaining, always demanding more from me." Sophia raised an eyebrow. Perhaps she just wanted to be valued. Michael didn't respond. Instead, he took a long sip of champagne, attempting to suppress the growing realization that he wasn't as blameless as he wished to believe. While the couple argued in a secluded corner, Isabella was the center of attention. A renowned publisher, captivated by her literary prowess, was discussing the success of her latest novel. "You've truly captured the essence of love and loss, Isabella. It's a masterful work." "Thank you," she replied, with a tranquil smile. "Pain, when transformed into art, can be liberating." Those words struck Michael like a blow. He knew the novel was about their marriage. Every line carried the truths he had tried to bury. Sophia noticed Michael's discomfort and glared at him. "She wrote about you, didn't she?" "Maybe or maybe not. I don't know. I've never read anything she's written," he admitted with a forced smile. "Well, it seems she's moved on," Sophia replied, her tone laced with venom. "You should do the same." As Michael grappled with his inner conflict, Isabella approached him with a resolute expression. He felt the weight of inevitability. They needed to converse, and he knew it would be agonizing. When she halted a few steps from him, the room seemed to freeze in time. "Michael, it's been so long since I've seen you. I can't even recall the last time we spoke." She began, her tone low, yet sharp as a blade. "I think it's time we had a conversation." Her stance was poised and self-assured. He tried to compose himself, adjusting his tie, but his unease was evident. Sophia stood beside him, silent, yet her eyes were locked on Isabella, scrutinizing her every move. "Isabella," he said, attempting a casual tone that came out strained. "Is it really necessary for us to talk here?" "I'd say so," she replied, her voice steady and controlled. "It's hard to catch you anywhere else, since you always seem to be occupied." Michael frowned, but before he could respond, Isabella crossed her arms and continued, "I would have thought that, after all this time, you might have changed. But it seems your priority is still to flaunt impeccable girlfriends and maintain appearances, isn't it?" She shot a glance at Sophia, who stiffened but maintained her composure. "Isabella, this is neither the time nor the place," Michael replied, his tone edged with irritation. "Ah, but when would that be?" Isabella retorted, raising an eyebrow. "While you're here, dazzling strangers, your daughter, our daughter, is at home wondering why her father never calls. But of course, sending money every month should suffice, shouldn't it? After all, it's always easier for you to purchase affection than to show it." Michael felt his throat tighten as Sophia looked away, clearly uncomfortable. "That's not fair, Isabella," he said defensively. "I do what I can and I work hard to provide for her." "You do what you can." Isabella let out a bitter laugh. "Michael, what Emily needs isn't a bank transfer. She needs a father, one who knows who her friends are, what she likes to eat, what scares her in the middle of the night. Do you know she's working on a science project? Of course not. You're more concerned about your next car or the next party where you can showcase your latest conquest." Sophia swallowed, her expression rigid. Isabella turned to her, her eyes gleaming with a mix of sarcasm and empathy. "Sophia, I hope you'll be patient. If you two are going to last, you'll need it because the constant outings, the vague excuses, and the unanswered messages become unbearable after a while." "Enough, Isabella," Michael interrupted, his voice louder than intended. A few nearby guests glanced their way, but quickly returned to their conversations, pretending not to overhear. "Oh, you don't need to make a scene here." "I'm not making a scene, Michael," Isabella replied, tilting her head slightly. "I'm simply reminding you that some responsibilities don't vanish just because you ignore them. Good luck, Sophia. Truly." Isabella took a step back, still calm and composed, while Michael was visibly shaken. She offered a brief smile, devoid of warmth, and moved to another corner of the room, where she was greeted by a group who seemed delighted to see her. Sophia looked at Michael, her expression harder than before. "Is she right?" "She's overreacting," he muttered, grabbing a glass of champagne from a passing tray. "You know how these women are after a divorce, always dramatic." But Sophia wasn't convinced. She remained silent, watching as Michael downed the champagne in one gulp. Throughout the evening, Michael couldn't help but glance at Isabella. She was surrounded by people who seemed to genuinely admire her. The publisher who had spoken to her earlier reappeared, accompanied by a well-known actress who praised her literary work. Isabella smiled, responding modestly, but there was something in her gaze that made it clear she knew the impact she was making. Every laugh, every compliment deepened Michael's frustration and discomfort. He took another glass of champagne, then another, and eventually switched to whiskey. Sophia watched him, growing increasingly irritated. "You seem obsessed with her," Sophia finally said. "Don't be absurd," he replied, but his tone was laced with irritation. "You don't understand. Isabella, she always knew how to manipulate people. Or maybe you just never knew how to appreciate her," Sophia retorted, turning away before he could respond. Michael continued to drink, now unable to hide the resentment building inside him. He watched as Isabella remained the center of attention, shining in a way he had never allowed her to before. As the evening drew to a close, Michael was leaning in a corner, an empty glass in hand, his eyes fixed on Isabella. He didn't know if it was the alcohol or the weight of his choices, but he felt as though the party was a cruel metaphor for his own life, a spectacle where he was merely a supporting character in Isabella's story. Isabella glanced in his direction one last time before leaving. For a brief moment, he saw something in her eyes, not anger, but something even more painful, indifference, and it shattered him. The drive home was silent. Sophia sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, her gaze fixed on the window. Michael, still under the influence of alcohol and the disastrous night, sat in the back seat without a word. He knew something needed to be said, but he couldn't find the right words. Or perhaps he lacked the courage to face the truth. As soon as the driver parked the car at Michael's luxurious apartment, Sophia got out without waiting for him. Inside, she finally broke the silence. "So that's it," she snapped, her voice filled with frustration. "Are you going to pretend that scene at the party didn't happen?" Michael closed the door, sighing. "It's not that simple, Sophia. Isabella always knew how to make an impact." "Impact?" Sophia shouted. "She did nothing but tell the truth. And you know what's worse, Michael? I can't even discuss it with you because deep down, I think she's right." "She overreacted," he replied, trying to sound convincing, but his voice faltered. Sophia crossed her arms, staring at him intently. "You don't even know your own daughter well, Michael. All this time we've been together, you've never brought your daughter here. How old is she, anyway? What's her best friend's name? You don't know, do you?" Michael ran a hand over his face, exasperated. "Sophia, I do what I can. I work hard to maintain all this. The house, the lifestyle. Isn't that enough?" "No, it's not," she retorted. "And you know what's worse? You're still stuck in the past, stuck on Isabella. Your behavior at the party was ridiculous. You drank and stared at her the whole time." "That's not true," he lied. But Sophia saw right through him. She shook her head in disappointment. "I should have known before. Are you going to say that you didn't spend the whole night looking at her? You didn't even try to hide it or disguise it?" "You're exaggerating," he replied, but his words sounded hollow. Sophia hesitated for a moment, taking a deep breath. "Tell me, Michael, what are we? A game to you? Or am I just next in line, waiting for you to tire me out?" "Sophia, this has nothing to do with you or her," he began, but his mind was muddled. And then, in the heat of the moment, he made the worst possible mistake. "Isabella, please, you have to understand." The name slipped out before he could stop himself. The silence that followed was deafening. "You called me Isabella?" Sophia asked, her voice low but charged with anger and disbelief. "Sophia, it was a mistake. I'm not well. I drank too much," he said quickly, but it was too late. "A mistake," she repeated, laughing humorlessly. "No. The mistake was that I thought you cared about someone other than yourself." She picked up her bag and walked toward the door. Michael tried to stop her, but she held up her hand. "Don't follow me. Stay with your ghost, Michael." And with that, she left, slamming the door behind her. Michael woke up the next morning with a throbbing head, more from embarrassment than a hangover. The memory of the argument with Sophia haunted him, but there was something even deeper troubling him. Isabella's words. He picked up the phone and called his assistant. "Cancel everything today," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'm not going into the office." "Understood, Mr. Harrington," she replied, but he hung up before she could say more. Michael spent the rest of the morning wandering around the apartment, unable to focus. Finally, feeling restless, he decided to go out. He went to the mall without a clear purpose. But as he passed a bookstore, something caught his eye. In the window, there was a display of Isabella's books. The most prominent title was her latest bestseller, Wings of Glass, with a photo of her on the back cover. She looked radiant and self-assured, but it was a synopsis that caught his attention. A poignant tale of a love shattered by selfishness, betrayal, and disillusionment. A story of survival, resilience, and liberation. Michael entered the bookstore and purchased all her books. ignoring the curious glances from the clerks. Back at his apartment, he collapsed onto the sofa and began reading. Isabella's talent was undeniable. Her words flowed like a melody, rich with emotion and truth. But what struck him hardest was how it felt as though she had bared her soul, pouring out all the pain he had inflicted. In the book that unmistakably depicted their marriage, Isabella described the loneliness of waiting for a husband who never returned, the feeling of being invisible, of never being enough. She recounted the betrayals, the hollow excuses, the broken promises. Michael felt a lump in his throat as he read one passage in particular. I often wondered if the problem was me. Maybe I was too demanding. Maybe my love was suffocating. But deep down I knew the truth. He never saw what I had to offer because he was too busy searching for something better, something he would never find. He closed the book, unable to continue for a moment. When he picked it up again, he found the sections about Emily, his daughter. Isabella described Emily's tears when she asked why her father was never there, the forgotten birthdays, the time she sat by the window waiting for a car that never arrived. Michael felt the crushing weight of his neglect. He tried to justify it to himself. Work, the demands of life, but he knew they were excuses. He had failed Isabella, and he was failing Emily. When he finished the book, Michael set it down on the sofa and buried his face in his hands. He felt exposed, as if Isabella had held up a mirror and forced him to confront the man he truly was. For the first time in years, Michael Harrington felt something he had avoided at all costs. Shame. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the world carried on as usual, but inside, something had shifted. He knew he couldn't continue living as he had before. Isabella had been right. Sophia was right. He needed to make amends, or at least try. And that began with his daughter. The next morning, Michael woke up early, determined to do something different. He felt exhausted, but for the first time in years, not from overwork or empty parties. It was the weight of his own conscience. He picked up the phone, hesitating before dialing Isabella's number. The call went to voicemail. He tried again, but the result was the same. Of course she won't pick up, he muttered to himself in frustration. With no alternative, he decided to send a message. Isabella, we need to talk. I know I failed as a father and as a husband. I want to change that, especially for Emily. Please give me a chance to make things right. Let me see her. He stared at the phone, waiting for a reply that didn't come. So he decided to go to the only place where he could feel useful, Emily's school. Michael arrived at the school in the middle of the afternoon, just as the children were rushing out of the gates. He looked around, trying to spot Emily. Finally, he saw her. A little girl with brown hair and pigtails, carrying a backpack that seemed too big for her. She was chatting with a friend, laughing about something they shared. Michael's heart ached. He hadn't seen her in person for months. She seemed taller, more mature, as if time had slipped through his fingers. Emily, he called, walking over to her. The girl looked at him, confused. For a moment, she didn't seem to recognize him. When she finally realized who it was, her smile faded, replaced by an expression of discomfort. "Hi, Dad," she said hesitantly. Michael crouched down to her level. Can I give you a ride home? I wanted to spend some time with you. Emily glanced at her friend, who shrugged, then looked down at the ground. Mom's picking me up. She didn't know you were coming. I know it was last minute, he admitted, feeling embarrassed. But I wanted to see you. Please. Before Emily could reply, Isabella appeared. She wore a casual outfit, but her posture was firm, her expression a mix of surprise and caution. "Michael," she said without warmth, "what are you doing here?" "I just wanted to see my daughter," he replied, trying to keep his composure. Isabella crossed her arms, shielding Emily with her body. Without warning, without planning it. "Do you really think that's how this works?" Michael took a deep breath. I know I messed up. I'm trying to fix it. Please, Isabella, just let me spend some time with her. Asterisk Isabella hesitated, looking at Emily, who seemed uncomfortable with the situation. Finally, she sighed. Asterisk, all right, but half an hour. And only because Emily seems willing to listen to you. Asterisk, the two of them went to a nearby cafe. Emily sat on one side of the table, stirring her mug of hot chocolate without looking at Michael directly. He felt the distance between them like an invisible wall. Asterisk, so, how are you? Asterisk, he asked, trying to sound casual. Fine, she replied without elaboration. I heard about the science project you're doing at school, he said, remembering something Isabella had mentioned at the party. It sounds amazing. Emily glanced at him, surprised that he knew about it. Asterisk, it's about the solar system. I made Saturn out of clay. Asterisk, Michael smiled. Saturn is my favorite planet. It is? She asked skeptically. Asterisk, yes. The rings have always fascinated me. When I was your age, I did a project on it, too. Asterisk, the conversation continued hesitantly. But gradually, Emily began to relax. Michael listened carefully to her every word, absorbing the details he had previously ignored. When the half hour was up, Isabella appeared to pick her up. Emily looked at him before leaving. Are you going to see me again? Yes, he replied firmly. I promise. Isabella looked at him, assessing whether the promise was sincere. Asterisk, I hope you keep it. Asterisk, after Emily got into the car, Isabella stood outside, crossing her arms. You're trying now, but have you thought about all the time you've lost? She asked, her tone calm but laced with resentment. I've thought about it these past few days, he admitted sincerely. Asterisk, Isabella, I've read your books, every word. I saw how much you suffered, and now I see how much Emily suffers. You have every right to hate me, but let me be part of her life. For real this time. Asterisk, Isabella stared at him for a moment, searching for signs of genuine regret. Asterisk, I don't hate you, Michael, but I don't trust you either. You will need to prove that you mean what you say. Not for me, but for Emily. Asterisk, he nodded, knowing that it would take more than words to win back his daughter. Back in the apartment, Michael looked at Isabella's books stacked on the table. He knew that the changes would have to be profound, starting with himself. It wasn't enough to want to be a better father. He had to act. As he read yet another passage about their marriage, Michael realized that for the first time in years, he felt something close to humility. Isabella and Emily deserved a different Michael, and he was determined to be that man. The next day, Michael parked his car in front of Emily's school 10 minutes early. He didn't want to risk being late, not after agreeing with Isabella that he would pick up his daughter every day. It was a small commitment, but for him, it felt like an important milestone, an attempt to make up for lost time. He watched the other parents, their casual conversations, and felt out of place. Everyone there seemed so integrated into their family's routines, while he was still a stranger in Emily's life. But when he finally saw her emerge from the gates, her backpack swinging and a shy smile spreading across her face as she recognized him, something inside him warmed. Hi, Dad, Emily said, running to the car. Hi, sweetheart, he replied, opening the door for her. How was school today? Emily began talking animatedly about the science project and how her teacher had praised her work. Michael listened carefully, letting his daughter's voice fill the emptiness he had carried for so long. It was a sound he didn't know he needed to hear so badly. On the way back to Isabella's house, Emily, always so full of energy, started talking about something that took him by surprise. Did you know Mom's dating? She said casually. Michael almost slammed on the brakes, but managed to keep his composure. He glanced at Emily, trying to mask the twinge of jealousy he felt. Oh, is that so? He asked, trying to sound indifferent. Yes, he's very nice, Emily continued, oblivious to her father's discomfort. Asterisk, his name is Victor. He takes us for walks in the park, and bought me ice cream the other day. Oh, and we're going on a cruise next week. It's going to be so much fun. Asterisk, Michael swallowed, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. The idea of another man occupying a space where he had failed so many times bothered him more than he wanted to admit. Isabella with someone else was something he had never truly considered, even though their marriage had ended years ago. "I'm glad he makes you happy," Michael managed to say with a forced smile. Emily nodded, not noticing the false lightness in her father's voice. He's fun. Mom seems happy too. She was happy without him. Perhaps even happier than she had ever been by his side. He felt small, irrelevant, like a shadow in her past. When they arrived at Isabella's house, she was waiting at the door. Michael saw from a distance the calm smile on her face. As she greeted Emily, he felt a mix of emotions: gratitude that she had raised such an incredible daughter and bitter jealousy that she had moved on. Isabella approached the car, exchanging a few quick words with Michael about Emily's day. She seemed so serene, so self-assured, that he couldn't help but wonder how the woman he had known, once so submissive to his will, had become so independent, so unattainable. "Thanks for picking her up," Isabella said with a small smile. "You're welcome. It's the least I can do," he replied, looking away. On the way home, Michael felt empty. Emily's words echoed in his mind. He's very nice. Mom seems happy. Victor. The name felt like an intruder, a constant reminder of everything he had lost. When he arrived at the apartment, the silence seemed more deafening than ever. He opened a bottle of wine, but stopped before pouring a glass. Drinking wouldn't solve anything, and he knew it. He sat on the sofa, staring at Isabella's books still on the table. He had read them all, as if they were a gateway to understanding her again. But now it seemed she was further away than ever. In the middle of the night, his phone rang. It was Sophia. "Michael," she began, her voice hesitant. "Can we talk? I've been thinking about us." He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of guilt and regret. Sophia was an incredible woman, and he knew it. But he also knew he couldn't give her what she deserved. Not now. "Sophia," he began, his voice low. I don't know if this is a good idea. I just want to understand what happened," she said, her voice growing firmer. I thought we were fine, but then after that party, everything fell apart. You were so distant. And then you called me Isabella. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. Michael took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "I'm sorry about what happened," he finally said, "but I think you deserve someone who isn't as confused as I am right now." Confused? Or still stuck on her? Sophia asked, the pain evident in her voice. Michael closed his eyes, remaining silent, letting the silence answer for him. "I see," Sophia finally said with a resigned sigh. I hope you find what you're looking for, Michael. And I hope it's worth it." Before he could reply, the call ended. He dropped the phone on the sofa beside him, feeling emptier than ever. He spent the rest of the evening staring at the ceiling, reliving every moment of the conversation with Emily, every word Isabella had said. He knew he had to change, not to win back Isabella or impress Sophia, but for himself and, above all, for Emily. As the sun began to rise, Michael finally made up his mind. He didn't know what the road ahead would look like, but he was determined to be a better father. Perhaps he could never undo the past, but he could try to build a future that was worthwhile, and that he knew was all that mattered. Michael sat on the edge of the bed as the pale morning light streamed in through the half-open curtains. The bottle of wine he had ignored the night before was still on the table, untouched. Although he was exhausted, his mind was more active than ever. Isabella was moving on. Emily had a potential other father, and he was stuck in a whirlpool of regret and self-doubt. He wasn't sure how long he stayed there, just staring at the ground. Finally, he decided to get up. He picked up his phone and started typing a message to Isabella. He wanted to insist on seeing her, on talking, but every time he tried to type, he erased the words. He knew that anything he said would sound like an excuse. Isabella deserves more. Emily deserves more. Asterisk, these words kept echoing in his mind as he grabbed a quick coffee and headed out for the day. He had no clear destination, but he needed to get out of the apartment. He needed to breathe. He drove through the city, passing places that unwittingly brought back memories of Isabella and how he had destroyed something that, at first, was so beautiful. After a few hours, Michael found himself parked in front of a flower shop. He went in without knowing exactly why. He bought a bouquet of white lilies, Isabella's favorite flowers, and as he walked back to his car, he had a flash. It wasn't Isabella who needed flowers. It was Emily. He arrived at school earlier than usual, bouquet in hand. As he waited, he felt the curious stares of other parents, but he didn't care. When Emily finally came out of the gates, her eyes widened at the sight of him holding the flowers. "For me?" she asked in surprise. "Of course." Michael replied with a smile. "You deserve all the flowers in the world." Emily took the bouquet, her shy smile warming Michael's heart. Asterisk, they're so beautiful, Dad. Thank you. Asterisk, they walked to the car, and during the journey, Emily held the flowers as if they were the greatest gift she had ever received. As he drove her home, they talked about the day, her friends, and even her next science project. But then, while playing with the flower petals, Emily said something that froze Michael for an instant. "Victor gives flowers to Mom, too. But you've never given her flowers before, have you?" Michael felt his stomach turn. He glanced quickly at his daughter through the rearview mirror, but Emily was still distracted by the bouquet, unaware of the impact of her words. "No, Emily, I don't think so," he admitted, his voice low. She shrugged as if it were no big deal. "I guess you're trying now, huh?" He tried to answer, but his voice wouldn't come out. She was right. He was trying now, but why had it taken so long? That evening, when he got home, the phone rang again. For a moment, Michael thought it might be Isabella, but when he saw Sophia's name on the screen, a weight settled on his chest. He thought about not answering, but knew that running away wouldn't solve anything. "Hi, Sophia," he said as he picked up. "Michael," she began, her tone calm but firm. "I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation, about how we ended, but I feel I need to tell you a few things before I move on." He leaned back on the sofa, preparing himself for what was coming next. "You didn't realize it, but I really tried to make things work between us," Sophia continued. Asterisk, I ignored the signs. The moments when you seemed to be somewhere else, thinking about someone else. I thought that if I was patient, you would finally put the past behind you. But the truth is, you never did. And I can't compete with that. Asterisk, Sophia, I'm sorry, Michael began, but she interrupted him. Asterisk, I know you are, but I feel you need to hear this. You're still stuck on Isabella, on what happened between you. And maybe this isn't even about love. Maybe it's about regret, about what you didn't do for her and for your daughter. Asterisk, Michael remained silent, unable to argue. I hope you'll sort it out, Sophia said, her voice softening. Not for me, not for her, but for yourself, because the way it is, you'll never be happy. And honestly, I deserve someone who's fully committed to me. You do, he admitted, his voice filled with sincerity. Take care, Michael, she said before hanging up. He stared at the phone for a long time, feeling an emptiness that seemed to grow with every passing second. Over the next few days, Michael began to dedicate himself more to Emily. He picked her up and dropped her off at school, talked to her about her interests, and even helped with her science project and other subjects, something he would never have imagined doing before. But even as he strived to be a better father, the thought of Isabella lingered. The thought of Victor, Emily's seemingly perfect companion, gnawed at him. He imagined what Victor was like, kind, considerate, everything he wasn't. And above all, someone who made Isabella laugh again. On Thursday afternoon, while waiting for Emily at school, Michael decided he needed to talk to Isabella. Not to try to win her back, but to be honest, to open up. He needed to tell her everything he had been holding back for so long. Isabella was at home, packing her bags for the cruise when she heard the doorbell. When she opened the door, She was surprised to see Michael standing there with the most serious expression she had ever seen on him. "Michael," she said, crossing her arms. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice low. "It's important." Isabella hesitated but opened the door, gesturing for him to come in. "We don't have much time. I'm packing to travel with Emily tomorrow." She said casually, but with a note of caution in her voice. "I know," Michael replied. "Emily told me about the cruise and about Victor." Isabella sighed, closing her eyes for a moment. "So that's what this is about." "No, or maybe it is, in part," he admitted. "But what I mean goes beyond that." Isabella waited, her arms still crossed. "I've read your books," he began, his voice breaking. "All of them. And for the first time I understood. I saw what you went through, how much I hurt you. And more than that, I saw how I failed Emily." Isabella blinked in surprise, but didn't reply. "I was selfish, Isabella. I was so focused on my work, on my image, that I never really saw you. I never saw what you needed. I never saw Emily. And I'm sorry for everything." She remained silent, her expression neutral, but her eyes betrayed a glimmer of emotion. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he continued. "I just want you to know that I recognize what I've done, and that I'm trying to change. For Emily, and maybe a little for myself." Isabella finally sighed, uncrossing her arms. "I believe you're trying, Michael, and I hope you'll keep trying. For Emily, especially." Michael nodded, feeling a small sense of relief. "But as for me," she hesitated, choosing her words carefully, "I've moved on. And I think you should do the same, not out of anger or resentment, but because sometimes people just don't belong together anymore." He swallowed but nodded again. "I understand," Isabella smiled, a small but sincere smile. "Be a good father to Emily. That's all that matters now." As Michael left, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He knew the road ahead would still be long, but for the first time, he felt he was in the right place to start. After they returned from the cruise, Michael was waiting for Emily outside the school, as he did religiously every day. His commitment to his daughter had become a fixed point in his routine, an anchor that kept him focused. He didn't know if Isabella realized how much it meant to him, but Emily certainly was beginning to. When he saw his daughter coming out of the gates, dragging her backpack and chatting animatedly with a friend, Michael waved. Emily smiled and ran to him, throwing herself into his arms. "Hi, Dad," she said, her face lighting up. "Hi, sweetheart. How was your first day back at school after your trip?" Emily hesitated for a moment, her smile fading slightly. "It was good, but there's something I wanted to tell you." Michael noticed a change in her tone and opened the car door for her. "All right, we can talk on the way." When they were in traffic, Emily began to speak, her voice hesitant. "Mom and Victor broke up." Michael was silent, surprised. He glanced at Emily through the rearview mirror, trying to gauge how she felt about it. "Really? And you're okay with that?" Emily shrugged, looking out the window. "I guess so. Actually, I don't think he was as nice as he seemed at first." Michael gripped the steering wheel tighter, trying to hide the satisfaction he felt at hearing this. "Why do you say that, Emily?" "Because on the cruise, he was different," she explained. At first, he was fun, but then he started complaining about everything. He complained if I wanted to play in the pool a bit more, or if Mom wanted to spend more time with me. He seemed, I don't know, annoyed all the time. Michael felt his stomach turn. He thought of Victor, the man who had seemed so perfect in Emily and Isabella's eyes, now revealing a face he had always feared. "And your mother? What did she think of that?" Emily was silent for a moment, thinking. "I think she was sad, but she said she doesn't want to be with someone who doesn't like me as I am. She said we should always listen to our instincts, and I think her instinct said it wasn't going to work out." Michael looked at his daughter through the rear-view mirror again. Your mother is very wise, Emily, and she's right. You deserve to be surrounded by people who love and respect you exactly as you are. Emily smiled, relaxing into the seat. Yeah, I guess so. The rest of the drive was uneventful, but Michael's heart was churning. He wondered how Isabella was feeling. He knew how much she valued Emily's happiness, but he also knew how hard it was to give up something or someone that seemed like a promise of happiness. Flashback to the cruise. At the beginning of the trip, everything seemed promising. Victor was charismatic and attentive, as he had always been. He helped Emily with games on deck and made Isabella laugh with his stories. But as the days went by, something began to change. Victor seemed irritable, impatient. If Emily insisted on staying a little longer in the pool or asked to watch the children's show, he would roll his eyes. Again, Emily. Can't we do something more adult? Isabella watched everything, feeling uncomfortable. At first, she tried to justify Victor's behavior. Maybe he was tired. Maybe it was just the stress of being away from work. But as the days went by, his attitudes became more evident. One evening, while they were having dinner in the ship's restaurant, Emily excitedly began to tell him about her adventures at the kids' club. Victor interrupted her mid-sentence. Emily, could you keep it down a bit? We're in a restaurant. Emily fell silent, her eyes fixed on her plate. Isabella felt her blood boil, but took a deep breath before speaking. Victor, she's just excited. You don't have to talk like that. Victor raised his hands in surrender. All right. I'm just asking for a little consideration. From that moment on, Isabella became more attentive, and she realized something that bothered her deeply. Victor had no patience for parenthood. He liked Isabella, but didn't seem willing to accept Emily as part of a complete package. On the last night of the cruise, while Emily slept in the cabin bedroom, Isabella confronted Victor. You're not the same person I knew, she said, crossing her arms. Oh, Isabella, you're exaggerating, he replied, exasperated. It's just that sometimes it's hard to deal with children. I thought that maybe, with Michael around now, you could share the responsibilities more. She remained silent, shocked by what she was hearing. Share the responsibilities? Victor, Emily is not an obligation. She's my daughter. And if you think her role in my life is negotiable, then I don't think we have anything more to discuss. Victor tried to argue, but Isabella was determined. She knew that staying with someone who didn't accept her daughter unconditionally would be repeating the same mistakes of the past. Back to the present. The next day, while picking up Emily again, Michael felt a mixture of concern and admiration for Isabella. He knew how difficult it must have been to make that decision, but he also knew that she would always put Emily first. Emily seemed more cheerful than the day before. When she got into the car, she started talking about her classes and her friends, and Michael noticed that she seemed calmer, as if a cloud had passed. How's your mother? He asked casually as he drove off. She's fine, Emily replied. Last night, we made popcorn and watched a movie. She was... Your mother is an incredible woman. You're lucky to have her. Emily nodded thoughtfully. I know. And I think she deserves someone who's really nice, like you're trying to be. Michael felt a tightness in his chest, but also a twinge of hope. He didn't know where this journey would take him, but he was determined to keep trying, not just for Emily, but for himself. And perhaps for the remnant of hope that one day, Isabella would also see the man he was trying to become, and he was going to do whatever he could to win Isabella's love back. A few days later, the day was clear and serene when Michael arrived at the downtown bookstore, where Isabella usually spent her afternoons. He knew she would be there, concentrating on her reading, or perhaps sketching out ideas for her next book. Over the last few months, he had been trying to rebuild their relationship, not as husband and wife, but as allies in Emily's upbringing. He didn't have unrealistic expectations. He knew that regaining Isabella's trust would take time. Emily, however, had become the strongest link between them. School pickup days and weekends together had become something natural. Michael finally understood how small actions could make a huge difference. He began to take pride in being present, in being by his daughter's side. And somehow, this also helped him to see Isabella in a way he never had before. When he entered the bookstore, he saw Isabella sitting at a table near the window. She looked calm, with a cup of coffee beside her and a notebook open in front of her. There was a lightness in her posture that he hadn't seen for years. He took a deep breath before approaching. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said with a hesitant smile. Isabella raised her eyes in surprise, but relaxed when she saw him. Michael, no, it's all right. I'm just trying to organize some ideas. For a new book. He sat down in front of her uninvited, but she didn't seem to mind. "Maybe," she replied, closing her notebook. It's still at the beginning. Nothing too definite. Michael nodded, genuinely interested. You know you have incredible talent, don't you? Your books are impressive. Isabella arched an eyebrow, a little suspiciously. You've told me that before, but it still seems strange to hear it from you. He laughed without humor. I deserve it. I guess in the past, I never gave you the importance you and your talent deserved, but I'm trying to change that now. And to be honest, I wanted to talk to you about something. Isabella tilted her head, curious. What would that be? I've been thinking. He paused, adjusting his tone. What if we organize an exhibition for you at the next book biennale? Something that celebrates your career, your books, your impact as a writer. Isabella blinked in surprise. Are you serious? Completely serious. I've already made some contacts, and I know I can organize something special. I thought it would be a good way to show the world what you stand for, and also to encourage you to write this new book. For a moment, Isabella was silent, absorbing the idea. There was a mixture of incredulity and excitement on her face. Michael, she finally spoke, her voice lower. Why are you doing this? Because you deserve it, he replied without hesitation. Because for too long, I've been blind to what you're capable of. And because I believe in you, Isabella. I always have. I've just been too stupid to show it. Isabella looked at him for a long moment, searching for some evidence of falsehood but found nothing. For the first time, it seemed that Michael was being completely sincere. I don't know what to say, she admitted with a shy smile. Then say yes, he replied. Let me do it for you. She hesitated for a few more seconds before nodding. All right, but only if you promise not to overdo it. I promise, he said, raising his hands in surrender. The following weeks were intense. Michael immersed himself in planning the exhibition, getting involved in details that he would previously have delegated to someone else. He chose photos that represented the most important moments in Isabella's career, worked on partnerships with publishers, and even managed to get one of the Biennale's biggest talks dedicated to her. Isabella, for her part, felt divided. It was hard to ignore Michael's efforts, but at the same time, she was afraid to allow herself to trust him again. However, seeing his commitment, the way he devoted himself not only to the project, but also to Emily, made her start to let her guard down. When the day of the Biennale finally arrived, Isabella was impressed by what she saw. The exhibition was elegant, carefully organized, and for the first time, she felt that the space reflected who she was as a writer and as a woman. Michael stood next to Emily, watching her as she welcomed the first visitors and gave interviews to the press. He didn't want to steal the limelight, but at the same time, he was proud to have been part of that moment. She looked so happy, Emily said, tugging on her father's arm. She deserves to be, Michael replied, smiling. After the exhibition ended, Isabella found Michael and Emily in a corner of the Biennale. She was visibly moved. Thank you, she told him sincerely. For everything. That was more than I could have imagined. You don't have to thank me, he replied, even more sincerely. I only did what I should have done a long time ago. Isabella smiled, but there was something else in her eyes. Asterisk, Michael, I don't know exactly when it happened, but I've noticed that you've changed. And as hard as it was at first, I'm beginning to believe that this change is real. Asterisk, it's real, he assured her. Asterisk, I know I've hurt you and Emily a lot. I can't change the past, but I'm willing to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it. Asterisk, Isabella nodded, holding his gaze. I believe you. In the months that followed, Michael, Isabella, and Emily's lives took an unexpected but natural turn. They started spending more time together, not just because of Emily, but because they began to rediscover what had brought them together in the beginning. Isabella began working on her new book, encouraged by Michael's constant support. Not only did he read every draft she showed him, but he also made constructive suggestions and helped her look for inspiration. One evening, while they were at Isabella's house, something that had become a regular occurrence, Michael prepared dinner while Emily helped her mother with the computer. It was a simple scene, but for everyone there, it represented something much greater: togetherness. When dinner was ready, everyone sat down at the table. Michael raised his glass of wine and looked at Isabella and Emily. I wanted to say something, he began, a little nervously. Asterisk, you two mean everything to me. I know it took me a while to realize it, but you saved me from myself. Thank you for giving me the chance to be a better man. Asterisk, Isabella smiled, touching his hand. We're a family, Michael, and that's what matters. Emily raised her glass of juice enthusiastically. To our family. To our family, Michael and Isabella repeated in unison. At that moment, as they laughed and talked, they all knew that the past was finally where it should be, behind them. The future, bright and full of possibilities, was theirs to build together. So, what did you think of this moving story of redemption, love, and reconnection? Leave your rating from 1 to 10 here in the comments, and tell me what your favorite part was. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a like to help this content reach more people. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our engaging stories full of twists and turns. And of course, don't leave without checking out the video that's appearing here on the screen. It's another incredible narrative that you'll love. See you next time